注意を自分の内側に向けてください。
And allowing our mind to take a break, letting go of any thoughts about what we have to do and this and that, and just allowing the awareness to rest on the natural flow of breathing.
皆さん、自分のマインドに休息を与えてください。考えていることなどをすべて脇に置いて、自分の自然な呼吸に意識を向けてください。
Perhaps noticing the rising of the belly with the in-breath and then falling again with the out-breath.
呼吸とともに膨らんだりへこんだりするお腹を感じてください。
Okay, and now coming to the P, proceeding with calmness and curiosity. So you may open your eyes if you have closed them.
では、今得られた穏やかさとともに目を開けて、また行動していきましょう。
Thank you. It is such a simple thing to do, and it's amazing just how doing this for 2-3 minutes can put us into a calmer, more peaceful state of mind, isn't it?
このストップでいう練習は本当に2、3分でとても短いものなんですけれども、この2、3分の短い練習で気持ちがこんなに穏やかになるというのは、驚くべきことだと思います。
Okay, so we'll take the same approach as with the previous sessions. I'll give a short introduction again, and then we'll do mindfulness practice, and then we conclude today's session.
それでは今日も以前と同じように、一番最初にマインドフルネスの紹介をした後に練習、そしてシェアリングに進んでいきたいと思います。
And as before, I thought maybe we can start with a bit of sharing in the chat. I would love to hear what you find challenging about communicating with others.
それでは皆さん、まずはチャットボックスにシェアリングをしていただけると幸いです。で、何をシェアしていただきたいかというと、皆さんが日常のコミュニケーションの中で、困難に思うこと、困ること、それをチャットの方にシェアしていただいて、話を進めていきたいと思います。
Obviously, there are no right or wrong answers. Just curious what you find challenging. That could be very difficult, different for different people. Okay. I see. Thank you.
皆さんがどんなことに困難を感じているのか興味があります。何でも自由に書いてください。
Already coming in. Okay, we use the same words, emotions. The meaning is different between the other and myself. Yes, wonderful. So leading to misunderstanding, hesitation. Find interesting topics to talk about. Yes, then it's kind of stressful also, and maybe language barrier, yeah, becoming too shy. Building a wall for the other, being biased. Okay. Emotion is not always expressed. Yes, oftentimes we're hiding. Maybe we're hiding behind that wall that we built. Communicating with difficult people also. Reading between the lines when the person is not expressing his opinion candidly. Absolutely, yes. Having to guess what the person really means. You don't accept what I say. Yes, exactly. Once we deal with other people, they might not accept it. They might have a different viewpoint. Okay, wow. Yes, so many different things. Wow. Hiro-san, do you also want to translate some of the Japanese for me, please?
Yeah. So, disagreements and misunderstandings, and when I need to communicate with my colleague who is very critical and aggressive, when I don't have a common topic, and when I talk with someone who just keeps talking one way, then, when I just want to have a discussion, another person thinks I'm criticizing him or her. And when I need to say what I don't want to say, but I have to say, or, when I have a lot of negative things coming up from inside. And so.
Thank you so much. Yeah. So, isn't it amazing? So much sharing and so quickly. Seems like all of us, we find communicating challenging to some extent.
そうですね、皆さんがチャットに書いてくれたことからも分かるように、本当に我々の多くがコミュニケーションっていうのを、チャレンジングなものだと思っている。
For many different reasons, right? And here also, we have to be careful with mindfulness, that of course it cannot solve all our communication problems. For example, just because we practice mindfulness, it doesn't mean we can suddenly speak a foreign language or understand the foreign language, or it doesn't mean that we don't have any conflict or differences in point of view with other people anymore. But what it can do, partly what we try to do in mindfulness, is we try to change our relation to our experience. How do we relate to that interaction? How do we relate to the fact that we're worried about the conflict? We dislike disagreeing with somebody else, or we feel anxious about having nothing interesting to talk about. How do we relate to that? That's partly what mindfulness can help.
で、ここで皆さんにお伝えしたいのは、マインドフルネスというのは、全てを解決するものではないと。やはり、マインドフルネスを練習したからといって、コミュニケーションに全く問題がなくなるとか、そういうわけではなくて、マインドフルネスの練習というのは、関係性を変えていくものであって、つまり、人との関係っていうものを、マインドフルに変えていくことで、コミュニケーションを改善していく。そういうことはできます。
So let's take a look again at the definition of mindfulness that we had introduced in the first workshop. And then if we see again here, paying attention in a particular way, on purpose, in the present moment, non-judgmentally.
で、ここで一番第一週にも紹介したマインドフルネスの定義を皆さんともう一度共有したいと思います。マインドフルネスというのは、意図を持ってこの瞬間にジャッジをせずに注意を向けるということです。
So if we apply this to the process of communicating with other people. Then we can see one thing mindfulness would suggest is that we focus on the communication in the present moment. We are not thinking about something else. We're not absent-minded, right? We're not also internally distracted by worrying about how will I communicate, will I say the right thing, and so on so much. But we're actually really focusing on that on the communication. And the second, non-judgmentally, right? That means also we try to withhold judging the other person too quickly. We're also withholding judging ourselves so quickly, right? And maybe also the whole relationship and the communication itself. Things like, oh, this person is so stupid, or I can't communicate well, or this conversation is not going well. These are all judgments. So a mindfulness perspective would suggest we try to be present with what is going on, also to our experience of this, without judging it so quickly.
で、このマインドフルネスの定義をコミュニケーションに当てはめると、まず第一に言えることは、今、ここで起きているコミュニケーションに注意を向けるということ。将来の不安とか、過去のこととかを考えずに、今ここで起きているコミュニケーションに注意を向けるということが一つ。で、もう一つ大切な点は、このジャッジをしないということ。話してる相手に、この人バカだなとか、ちょっとこの会話うまくいかないなとか、そんな風に、相手に対してジャッジをしない。と同時に、自分に対しても、ジャッジをしない。何か、こんなこと言ってしまったらどうだろうとか、なんかそういう自分に向けたジャッジもしない。そうやってジャッジをしないことで、今この瞬間に起きているコミュニケーションそのものに注意を向けていくということです。
Of course, it doesn't mean that we have to agree with everything the other person says, right? So this is tricky because we say non-judging, but of course, sometimes there's disagreement, right? So another way, maybe to elaborate a bit more, we talked about beginner's mind and curiosity also. It's about being curious about what the other person has to say, and maybe respecting that person, as a human being also, which is different from agreeing with everything that person says, right? So we can be curious, we can listen, we can try to understand the other person. We can also be aware of how we feel. Wow, I'm really taken aback by what you say, right? And we may be honest about this, but it is not this judgmental attitude. Oh, this person, especially about the other person as such.
で、ここでジャッジをしないということは、相手の言うことに全て同意するということではありません。やはり、ディスアグリーメント、意見の相違というのはありますので、ジャッジをしないっていうことは、ある意味、ビギナーズマインド、初心者のマインドを保つということですね。この初心者のマインドとともに、相手が何を言おうとしているのかっていうことに、好奇心とオープンさを保つこと。そういうことで、この相手に対するジャッジとか、コミュニケーションのさなかで自分に向けられたジャッジとかを、一旦脇に置くことができて、コミュニケーションを進めていくことができます。
You might also remember the S-ART model of mindfulness, right? Where mindfulness works through the processes of self-awareness, self-regulation, and self-transcendence, right? And I think the self-awareness and self-regulation was very clear and very strong when we talk about stress management. For communication, the self-transcendence is also quite relevant, right? Because it's about going beyond just focusing on oneself. Transcending that narrow focus and considering the other person, having empathy for the other person, taking the perspective of the other person.
このモデルのマインドフルネスの、理解ですと、最初の2つ、セルフアウェアネスとかセルフレギュレーション、自分の意識とか自己制御っていうのは、ストレスマネジメントのところでもよくわかると思うんですが、コミュニケーションというのはこの3番目のセルフトランセンダンス、自己を超越することが大切になってきますね。自分だけに意識を向けるんではなくて、目の前にいる相手、自分を超えたものに意識を向けていくという側面が加わってくるからです。
At the same time, self-awareness is still also important. How do I feel? Because we also do not completely lose ourselves. And I feel sometimes, culturally speaking, in Japan, there can be sometimes a tendency people are so considerate of the other person and so much trying to figure out what the other person wants and so on and do right to the other person that they forget about sometimes themselves. I'm just maybe stereotyping here a bit, but sometimes I have that feeling. And so I do think there's the need for balance between transcending yourself, but still also having self-awareness.
で、ここではコミュニケーションにおいてセルフトランセンデンス、自分を超えることを強調していますが、同時にセルフアウェアネス、自分に関する意識を保つこともコミュニケーションでは大切です。で、これはステレオタイプかもしれませんが、私が日本の人たちを見ていると、文化的についつい相手に遠慮してしまうとか、相手のことを思いやりすぎてしまって、自分をおろそかにする。セルフアウェアネスというか、自分に対する意識をアウェアネスをおろそかにしてしまう傾向があるようにも見受けられて、やはりこのセルフアウェアネス、自分に対する意識とセルフトランセンダンス、自分を超えることのバランスをうまく取ることが大切だと思います。
So let me skip this and move on straight here. So when I say self-awareness, then what does it mean? Also remember the beta. Body sensations, emotions, thoughts, and action impulses, BETA. So we're going to use this in our mindfulness practice now, where we also to be aware of our beta, right? How does the communication make me feel inside?
このセルフアウェアネス、自分に対する意識といったときに、この第1週目で扱ったビータ、BETA を思い出してください。B は身体の感覚、E は感情、T は思考、で、A はこの行動に関する衝動ですね。で、コミュニケーションをしているときに自分はどう感じているのかということに関する練習をしていきます。
Just very briefly, remember, as we do our mindfulness practice, remember the attitudes of mindfulness. So we don't try to push so hard. For the practice, we let go, we use a self-kindness attitude, also taking care of ourselves, having some patience, right? And accepting the experience. So just a quick reminder.
で、マインドフルネスを練習をするときはいつもこの、これらの態度について、覚えておいてください。マインドフルネスを練習をするときは、一生懸命やりすぎないこと。ここにも書かれているようなノンストライビング、そういう態度を持って練習をしていってください。
So, and I've been thinking what kind of practice to do. And I was thinking maybe we should do some breakout rooms and pair you with each other so you can actually have a communication. But then I thought, given that we are meeting online, this is quite difficult. So I ultimately decided on doing a variation of the Irimi practice that we also did in the first session.
で、今日コミュニケーションということでどんな練習を皆さんとしようかなって考えていたときに、例えば皆さんをブレイクアウトルームに分けて、で、コミュニケーションしてもらうっていうことも考えたんですけれども、これはオンラインのワークショップですし、最終的にはこの第1週でやったこの入り身の練習をコミュニケーションに応用してやろうと決めました。
So, shall we practice this together? So then please, everyone,